Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of Your Hope-Filled Perspective, where it's always our goal to restore hope, renew minds, and empower listeners to live in your God-given identity. We have been in the midst of the Sacred Scar Story series, and I hope that you have been encouraged and filled with hope as much as I have, listening to real people tell about real pain that they've gone through and how our really good God has brought redemption through it. We've got another Sacred Scar story today, and this one is near and dear to my heart because I can relate on a personal level. But today's guest is no stranger to the podcast. She's been on the podcast before, and you've probably seen me posting about being on her podcast. It's Rhonda Stoppe, who is the best-selling author of 7 books. And for more than 30 years, Rhonda has helped thousands of women build no regret lives, which I just absolutely love. She's a highly sought after speaker and a popular voice in the Christian living community. And I'm grateful that she's chosen to spend a few minutes of her week with us. Welcome back, Rhonda.
So excited to spend some time with you again, Michelle.
I always love when we get time together.
Me
But
too.
it was in the very first episode that I recorded with you on your Hope Filled podcast that we chatted a little bit afterwards. And I realized, oh my goodness, we have a whole lot more in common than just raising boys and trying to live without regrets.
Mhm.
And what I have seen, both in private practice as well as my almost 6 years of interviewing people on this podcast, is that frequently those really painful trials that we go through are an opportunity for God to use us to minister to other people. So I would love if you would share with our audience about an experience that you've gone through that has either created physical scars, emotional scars, relational scars, spiritual, or sometimes a combination of them.
Wow. So many things, right?
Right.
So I have to kind of back up and tell my story a little bit. So I married my high school sweetheart, love of my life, still have a crush on him. We've been married 42 years and we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area and we started flipping houses because it's super expensive to buy a house in the Bay Area. And we would live in these houses as we worked on them. Now, this was in the 1900s, in the olden days when we did this, and people thought we were crazy. Nowadays, we'd have had a show, I'm sure of it. But
Right.
back then, people thought we were nuts. And we would buy these terrible houses, move into them, and fix them up. And then as soon as it got done, Steve would come home and say, "Hey, baby, I found another one." And I'm like, "All right." And then his goal was always to be debt free and to live in the country. And I'm like, you know what? I love you. So I love your dream. Let me have the credit card. I'll see you in a little while. And so one day he came home and he said, "It's time. We can cash out and get out of the Bay Area. I found a ranch. And if we want to move there, we can be debt free." Well, he had first found a place in Colorado. And I'm like, "I want to stay in California. I'm a California girl. I want to be close to family." So we found this ranch and we drove up a mountain road, and it was snowing that day, and we had our Mercedes and it was icy, and we called the realtor and he said, "If you make it, I'll meet with you, but you're not going to make it." Well, we made it. Steve was like, "I took the day off work. We're going to go check this out." So we get there and the realtor is like, "Okay," looking at City Girl. And he drives us in his four-wheel drive to where the ranch is to show us this cute little house covered with snow. And he said, "This is it." And it was a huge piece of land with this one-bedroom house, one bedroom and one bathroom. And Steve's like, "We could buy this and we can be debt free and we can build." He's a builder. We can add on to it and we can have no debt. And I look in this man's eyes and I know I'm holding his dream in the palm of my hand. And I know if I say no, that we're not going to do it. And I was scared to death, but I trusted his heart and I trusted his dream. And I said, "Okay, how about we do this? We will try to sell our house by ourselves without a realtor. And if it sells, then we'll go forward. And if it doesn't, then we'll revisit this and think about it, but we'll pray with an open hand." Well, of course, it sold. So we bought the ranch. And the day that we came to look at it after it closed escrow, the snow was gone. And so that cute little house that had all that frosting on it was a terrible shack. It was awful. It was just awful. And the people that had moved out left the doors open. So there was animals in there. I mean, there were animals in there. There was evidence animals had been in there. And Steve laughed, I cried, and it's funny. I shared this story. I don't even remember where. It might have been on Focus on the Family. And someone emailed me and said that I was in an abusive, controlling relationship and they could help me get out of it. Like, well, if you knew my husband, he's not at all controlling, but thanks for your concern. And so we moved into this 1-bedroom house. I told him, you get it. We had 2 kids at the time. I said, if you get it cleaned up, I'm going to go spend the summer at my mom's. My mom and dad had recently divorced and she was living in an apartment by herself in the Bay Area. So she loved having me and the kids there all summer with the swimming pool, and we'll come on the weekends. You fix it up. And he did. And it was charming when we moved in, but it was 1 bedroom. So the kids took the bedroom bunk beds and we took the sofa bed and we slept on the sofa bed, and we had no power. And I figure you just call the power company and they plug you in. No, it was almost 3 years before they brought in powers with helicopters. They brought in, they strung the lines with helicopter. They moved the poles because we're in the mountains. It was quite a deal. So we're living in this house on a generator in the middle of nowhere. Steve's going to work. He's leaving at 5 a.m, not coming home till 7 p.m. I'm at home with these kids in this little house, living his dream. And then, dun, 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 I got pregnant with our 3rd child. And, when you have a generator is what we were living on, that's how we had power. Late into the night, you're not watching TV for all hours because you have to run the generator. So you turn off the generator and you're like, I'm not tired. You tired? I'm not tired. You tired? And we had a surprise pregnancy. And I always say now she is my most favorite surprise God ever gave us. But I told Steve, I never, ever would have moved into the middle of nowhere if I was going to get pregnant again. I would never have done that. And Steve's like, it'll be fun. So I did my entire pregnancy with Kayla on that sofa bed. And we had a wood stove in the living room is how we heated the whole house. So it was, charming. And we brought her home. Steve was trying to add on a bedroom onto the house before she was born and didn't quite make it in time. So we brought her home and she was in the bassinet next to the sofa bed. I mean, you get it, right? That's my. In the midst of all of that, Steve goes back to work. I'm at home with my 3 children. And cool thing is, one of the last 1-room schoolhouses in the nation was 5 minutes from our house. So my daughter attended that school. So that was kind of a cool, charming little thing. And I became so overwhelmed and didn't know what was wrong with me. And I was so anxious. And so it wasn't depression. People will say postpartum depression. I wasn't depressed. That's not the word I would use to describe it. I was completely overwhelmed and didn't want to do what I was doing. And I told Steve one day, he came home in the middle of the day and I was in the children's bedroom with a chair in front of the door. It was the only room in the house that I could lock myself in. And I was on the bottom bunk of my little boy's bed, just weeping. And Steve came home and I had put the newborn in Meredith's arms. Meredith was 6 and she would come home from school and I would literally turn on Little Mermaid for the 1,000th time, turn on the generator so they could watch a movie. And I would put the baby in Meredith's arms and I just would go in the bedroom to be by myself. And so Steve came in and, you could hear that panic in their voice. It's like, where's your mom? And Meredith's like, I don't know, she's in there. And he comes in and I am just like weeping quietly because I don't want the kids to hear, right? And he goes, what is wrong with you? And I said, I don't know. This is just too hard. I just can't do this. It's too hard. Let me go to work. I'm living your dream. You're living mine. You stay home with the kids. You add on to the house, live in the middle of nowhere. I will commute to the office and let me live there, work there, and you do this. And he held me and he said, you can't make enough money. We're trying to add on to the house with cash. We don't want to take out a loan. And I'm like, let me try. And it was just a really dark season for me. And I did not know that it was postpartum depression. I just knew I was frail. I was fragile. And then slowly that postpartum kind of turned into really bad PMS, PMD. And I would have like the week before my period, I would just be overwhelmed. And, one of the things I remember telling my kids all the time was, please don't make any unnecessary noises. And I don't know if you've had postpartum or you've had PMS, noises just send you. And we're living in this little 2-bedroom house in the country. And I'm like, just please don't make any unnecessary noises. And these poor children are like, okay, how do we do that? And I remember not being the mom I wanted to be. I wanted to be fun. I wanted to be, and then like 2 weeks out of the month, I was myself. And then 2 weeks out of the month, I was not myself. And I remember explaining it to Steve because he said, babe, I've known you since you were 14. You're just not you anymore. What is wrong with you? And I wanted to be offended. Like I wanted to say,
Right.
how
Right.
dare you say that? But I knew I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
And see, we lived behind a locked gate on a ranch. I could hide. So whenever I wasn't able to really live life in a, out there, I just stayed home and I stayed within the locked gate behind our gate. So I explained it to Steve. I said, just imagine this, because, word pictures have such a powerful impact in helping someone understand what you're going through, right? I don't know if you ever watched years ago Gary Smalley's Hidden Keys to Loving Relationships. It was an old training. And that's one of the things Gary Smalley had shared. Tell a story that connects with their heart and they'll understand. So in my head, I was like, okay, what's a good story that will help him understand? So I said, imagine if you're a werewolf. And imagine if every full moon you were going to turn into a werewolf and you couldn't stop it. There's nothing you could do that was going to change that werewolf taking over your body. And the only hope you had is someone would care enough about you to lock you in a cage until the full moon had passed so you don't eat your young. That is PMS. And I literally saw a light bulb on top of his head. He's like, I get it. And I'm like, it's not, I don't want to be this way. And
Yeah.
now my mom had it, my sister had it. And I would always say, oh, come on, you're just using that as an excuse to hurt people with your words. I knew enough to not hurt people with my words. Like when all of it would happen, I would pull back and I would say, the fruit of the spirit, love, joy, peace, gentleness, patience, kindness, self-control. My only fruit was self-control. I could not let things come out of my mouth that I couldn't take back.
Yeah.
So I told Steve, the best way you can help me is to just let me be in my bedroom. Just let me pull away and you spend time with the kids and let me just get through it. And I would be in my room with my Bible in my lap, praying, asking God, help me. Why is this happening? I don't want, went to the doctor and I tried everything that I could try. And, they were not, one doctor said, just eliminate the stress in your life. And I'm like, I have
As a
three
mother.
children and I live in the country and but it was such a hard, it was 4 years of a very difficult, and I felt so ashamed because I knew the Lord and I had the Holy Spirit. And what happens with hormonal imbalances is it is a real experience that affects the serotonin in your brain and all those things. You're a doctor, you know better than I do. And it's a real experience that occurs, but then it plays itself out to where you can be very sinful in how you let yourself respond to it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then I've known women that are like, I've had women blast me over something. And then the next day come out and say, I'm so sorry I did that to you. I started my period. I'm fine now. And I'm like, literally going, wow, what you just said to me, like if I said that to someone, I would feel like I must hate them to say that. And no, I don't hate you. I just was hormonal, but I'm okay now. And the damage that we would do, so I felt shame. I felt overwhelmed. I felt lonely. I felt alone. I didn't think, like you were saying, I didn't think
Yeah.
anyone else was going through what I was. I feel like it's a silent suffering that we go through as Christian women because it's so shameful that if I have the Holy Spirit, why can I not get a handle on this?
Exactly. Yes, but there are medical contributors to it, just like there are to diabetes or heart disease. But that's what makes it so hard is because we are so ashamed about it. So then we don't want to talk about it because we don't know anybody else who's going through it. And we think we're all alone. And so then the message, at least the message I heard is, so what's wrong with me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that just brings on more guilt, shame, remorse, regret, fear,
Yeah.
isolation.
Yeah.
And the isolation is about the worst thing that we can do
Yeah.
because
Right.
then we don't share what's happened and other people don't go, you too? I thought I was the only one, which is exactly why I wanted you to come on and share this Sacred Scar story because we have to talk about it so that people know they're not alone. because that's where the enemy got me. You're all alone. Nobody understands. You're going to have to figure this out on your own.
Mhm. And then I remember what fixed it for me was we moved. We moved to Texas and we lived in town and we planted a church. And my husband was the youth pastor, and we had 200 teenagers in our house every Wednesday night. And I can remember a girl and a couple of girls came over to our house one morning and they wanted to meet with Steve about something. And I was up in my room. I was like, I can't come downstairs. The way that I feel right now, I cannot, I don't know how I'm going to interact with them. And they did nothing wrong. They were just in my space. And I was just like, I need to stay upstairs. And Steve sat me down and he said, you need help. And I don't know how to help you, but I know that there's something wrong with you and you need to get some help. And I was like, I know, I just don't know where to go. Because I had gone to other doctors that had my mom was addicted to Valium, and I'm sure it was because she had the same thing. My sister was addicted to prescription drugs. She had a psychotic reaction to Prozac. I did not realize at the time she was also snorting cocaine and using Prozac. Did not know that, but Prozac scared me because of that. And so I was scared to go. I didn't want to go, and my grandmother was an alcoholic. And so I looked in my, what do you call it? Your insurance book for doctors that are in your plan. And I said, Lord, I have no idea where to go, but I want to talk to a woman and I need you to direct me who to talk to. Cause I'd talked to doctors that were men that were very patronizing and like, something's wrong with your husband, go figure out. And it's like, my husband's the most amazing person in the world. I'm the crazy one. So I looked in my book, and her name was Dr. Michelle McDermott. And I'm like, I want to talk to, unless Michelle is a French man, it could be. I want to talk to her. What is an endocrinologist? I don't know. So I called the number and I said, hi, my name is Rhonda Stoppe, and I have severe PMS, PMD, whatever it is, that started after I had postpartum, and I'm losing my mind and I need help. And I don't know what an endocrinologist is, but I'm wondering if Dr. McDermott can help me. And her nurse practitioner said, I'm going to cry. She specializes in hormonal imbalances. And it was at the Women's Center in Austin, Texas. And she said, you need to come in. And I went in and she was so compassionate. She gave me a book and she said, and what I wish I remember the name of this book. It explained what physically happens to you when you're going through that. And it talks about how it gets so bad. And then after it's over, you think, oh, it wasn't that bad. And it won't be so bad next month. So you just keep going through it.
Yeah.
Or I'll do better next month. I'll try harder next month. So she said, I am going to run hormonal tests on you. I'm going to run thyroid tests. I'm going to check everything in your body. And she did. And she came back and I said, I feel like I have a broken brain. And she goes, well, you kind of do. She said, what's happening in your body is when your hormonal levels take such a dip, it's causing the serotonin levels in your brain, and I can't remember the exact medical terms, but to dip drastically. And that's what sends you into the way you're feeling. And she said, I can help you, but you're going to have to let me write you a prescription. And I said, no, I don't want to take any medication. My mom, my sister, my grandma. And she said, they probably were self-medicating. They probably had the same thing you had, and they did whatever was at their disposal to try to make it better. But she said, I'm not going to give you anything that makes you feel a certain way. Because I had one doctor give me Xanax, and Steve gave me a half of one day. This was back when we were living in the country, and I liked it. And I said, throw those away, because I understand why my mom and my sister do that. Throw those away. I could see myself run into the medicine cabinet every time I feel like this.
Yeah.
So I told the doctor that, and she said, I'm not going to give you anything like that. I'm going to give you something that will keep your serotonin levels the same throughout the month, and it won't take that drastic dip. So Steve and I talked about it, and he said, I think you should trust her. So I did. And the first time that I had a period after I was on that medication, it took me by surprise. Where before you're like, I just can't wait till I bleed, so I'm not crazy anymore. And all of a sudden I was like a junior high girl in the bathroom, unprepared. And I was like, oh, I just started. Oh, wow. And I cried and I came out and I told Steve, I'm back. I'm me again. And it was life-changing. And I remember sharing it at a women's Bible study that I hadn't been going to it was a community Bible study in the town that we lived in. And I shared just a little bit of my story. And I said, God led me to this doctor and I have been, it's amazing. And a woman knocked on my door after that study, came to my house, gave me a pamphlet that said hormonal or PMS is spiritual warfare. And you need to battle it on your knees. And I thought, this woman has no idea that I just spent 4 years battling it on my knees with the word, in my lap, praying, taking my thoughts captive, repenting. All I know, but I just thanked her and closed the door. I thought, you know what? If I hadn't gone through this, I would have been her. I would have done that to someone else. So that's where sacred scars.
Yes.
We comfort others with the comfort we ourselves have been comforted. I had to get that desperate. I didn't know that one day my husband was going to be a senior pastor, and we've been at the same church for 25 years now. I speak at women's events all over. I write books for women. And whenever you share this story, women are desperate to talk to you because they feel so alone and they don't think anyone can understand the struggle, and it's ruining their marriages. So I actually wrote an article for Focus on the Family, and it's called When Hormonal Imbalances Affect Your Marriage, because it definitely impacts your marriage relationship.
Well, and the enemy swoops in and whispers in your ear, you're the only one. Mm-hmm. So there must be something wrong with you. And that just promotes guilt and shame and regret. So we don't want to talk about it. But I'm so grateful that not that you went through it, but that as a result of going through it now, you can speak truth to the women that you encounter who are going through it. That is a beautiful picture of the whole essence of sacred scars, is that God doesn't cause our pain and suffering, but he will use it for good.
Yeah. And even for Steve, as a pastor, the compassion that he has for men whose wives are going through it. I mean, because what do men always say? My wife's crazy. I don't know what to do. She's not who she was. I don't know. She's crazy. And Steve's like, I understand. And the Bible says, husbands are to live with their wives according to knowledge. You have to know what's going on with your wife because it's playing itself out in the way she's interacting in relationships. But there's really something physiologically happening in her, and she is the weaker vessel. She is frail and she needs to be rescued. I needed Steve to give me permission to go get help. Because if he would have said, no, don't go to the doctor. You don't need medication. That's for, the world. We do it as a spiritual battle. I would have probably not pursued getting help. I would have been like, yeah, you're right. But he's the one that was like, okay, woman, we've tried this for 4 years. And I mean, my newborn that it started with was now starting kindergarten. And I was not the mom that I had wanted to be 2 weeks out of every month for her. That's not right. So yes, there is good, the Bible says we go through these things so that we have the comfort for others and we have the courage to share our story. And honestly, okay, so let's back up. After I went through the whole thing and I was like, went to the doctor, I'm like, you fixed me. I love you. Thank you so much. She's great. And then her nurse practitioner called me one day and I was on my way to a meeting. I used to meet women at coffee shops in Texas. That was like where I would meet to visit with women about whatever they wanted to talk about. And I grabbed my phone before I left and she said, hey, Dr. McDermott would like you to go on the news with her tonight. They want to interview her about hormonal imbalances and how she's helping people. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to do that. That's my private story. And my husband's in ministry. And I just kind of feel like that makes me look like I don't want to look in, I'm taking care of 200 people's teenagers. They don't need to know the crazy ladies taking care of their kids. So I said, I'm going to say no. And I left. And I went to the coffee shop where I was supposed to meet this woman. And I said, I'm so sorry, I'm late. I got this phone call and I told her the story. And she literally stood up, reached across the table, grabbed both of my arms and said, tell me what happened. I have to know. I'm losing my mind. And she said, I go to the movies when I'm feeling like that, because her and her husband worked at home together. So they had a business together. I literally leave and I go to the movies all day long. And I don't come home until everyone's in bed because I am a mess. And I was like, wow. And so I gave her the name of that doctor, but I also called the doctor back and said, I'll go on your show. I'm being prideful. I'm not wanting people to know my frailty because of my pride. And if God can use my frailty to help someone else, who am I to not let him use, I'll use your words, my sacred scars to help someone else who's desperate. This woman was desperate and I saw it. And I'm like, I will. And now that's why when I share about it, I don't tell all the details when I'm speaking at women's events like I used to, because everyone comes up and tells you what herbs that you should be taking and what diet you should be on and how you can fix it. And they don't know that I didn't eat chocolate or have coffee or caffeine for 3 years trying to, I did as much as everybody's advice I tried. But so now I don't give all the details. I just say, if you're in that situation and you want to talk to me, I'd love to visit with you afterward, because those are the ones you want to talk to, the ones that are as desperate as you were, because you see it in their eyes and they cry and they say, I love my husband and I'm sure he doesn't even know it because of the way I treat him half the time. And I don't know what to do about it. And my kids are afraid of me. And I'm not talking about being abusive, although I do think it can trigger. If you've been abused, I think it can also find its way, that red thread, into your family. But it's also just withdrawal. That's what I did. I just withdrew because I knew I couldn't be trusted. And that hurt our family. I would see it. Steve would recognize it in me before I recognized it. I'd be talking about something and I literally can see his face right now in our kitchen and him just going, what do you want me to do? I'll do anything. I just don't know what you want me to do. And I realized I'm blaming him for my anxiety. And that's what a lot of times what women do is like, if my head, and I have a book out. I just signed Christian Audio. This will be out in audio soon. If my husband would change, I'd be happy, because we start believing it's all his fault. And I have 2 daughters. And when they would be hormonal and they would get weepy or they would get triggered at their brother or somebody, who I would say, time out. Don't try to find someone to blame for how you're feeling right now. Your hormones are out of whack. You're getting ready to start your period or you're ovulating. Recognize what's going on in your body. It's no one's fault. You don't have to find someone to blame for why you're sad or why you're upset or why you're triggered. It's a hormonal imbalance. That's what you need to realize is going on. And let's visit how we can take care of you, not trying to assign fault to someone for why you feel this way. Because I think that's how it hurts marriages.
Yeah, for sure. And men don't understand because they don't go through that monthly cycle. So they have no point of reference for that. But Rhonda, if a listener is tuning into this conversation and they're resonating, maybe they're the one who feels like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one, or I don't know what to do. What hope-filled perspective do you want to leave them with today?
There is hope and there is help. Find a medical professional that will, I recommend an endocrinologist simply because that's who helped me. But I know that there are doctors who specialize in hormonal imbalances. So start there. You can go to your family physician, maybe you have to get a referral. I understand that, but don't give up and just find someone that you can talk to about it, someone that you can share it with. There's, like you were saying, isolating yourself makes it worse. It makes it so worse. And if you share it with someone and they give you those pat answers and they make you feel like it's your fault or like you should try harder, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and memorize more scriptures and, name and claim in Jesus' name that you're not going to act like that anymore. Find someone else. Just don't give up and keep looking for someone that can help you. You can find that article that I wrote for Focus on the Family, and it's called, what did I say? It's called When Hormonal Imbalances Affect Your Marriage. And then you can also go to Focus on the Family and get a free counseling session with them if you want that too. Because I'm not saying counseling isn't helpful. I mean, it's what you do. It's helpful. But I also know you're a doctor that can also say there's some things we can do that can help you physically. And honestly, for me, having that doctor, like she said, if I were treating you for migraines, would you take medication? I said, well, yeah, it's a migraine. And she said, see, because this plays itself out in the way that your personality reacts, you're not understanding, your brain is broken and I can treat you. So, yeah, it's a lot. Don't give up, find help. Maybe you can offer some resources, Dr. Michelle, because you probably know more. I mean, I would highly recommend that doctor in Austin, Texas that I went to. I'm in California now, but don't give up and don't suffer silently. And I feel like Satan keeps our secrets and makes us feel shame. So when we share it, it honestly disarms his hold on us.
It sure does.
Mhm.
Yes. But I would go back to what I've cautioned before. Find a safe person. You need to
Thank
be
you.
careful who you share this with, because some people haven't earned your trust or their right to know those intimate personal details.
Right. And then you
But
end up like that Bible study I shared at, and the lady came to my house. It's like, thank you. Yes, very true.
But for sure, you want a thorough medical evaluation so that they can rule out any other medical causes that could be contributing to this. And there
Yeah.
are a plethora of them.
Yeah.
So seek medical attention, consider counseling, and find a safe person for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
Rhonda, if our listeners want to connect with you, they want to find out about your books, about your speaking availability, where's the best place for them to find you?
Well, let's see. You can go to my website, noregretswoman.com, because I help you build a no regrets life. And a free resource, you can text the words, capital letters, no regrets, one word, to 55444. And you'll get a video of me teaching God uses ordinary people. And if you go to noregretswoman.com, they'll give you an option to sign up for my newsletter. I only send it out once a month. And there's also, you'll get a free chapter from my book, Moms Raising Sons to Be Men. And actually, it's the last chapter of the book. It's the highlight reel of the whole book. If you don't buy the book and you read that chapter, you're going to get a ton out of it. And then also my podcast, Old Ladies Know Stuff, which is a nod to the Titus 2 woman. And Michelle, you were my most recent guest. And I only put out usually 2 episodes a month. In the summer, I only do 1 a month. But yeah, lots of ways to connect with me. And if you want me to come speak, I would love to do that. Maybe one day Dr. Michelle and I will come speak at your thing.
That
Somebody
would be
figure out how to
fun.
get us there. That would
That
be
would be
super
fun.
fun.
I look forward to that. Friends, we'll put
Yes.
all the information about Rhonda and where you can find her and all of her resources at our show notes that you can find at drmichelleb.com. Rhonda, thank you for coming and sharing about a very painful experience that God used to bring about beautiful sacred scars and has allowed you to minister into the lives of countless women. Friends, I just know that there's been something in today's episode that has blessed you or encouraged you, or perhaps it's brought another friend to mind who's in need of hope and encouragement. Would you consider sharing this episode with your friends? Because until we start talking about it, people are going to continue to believe the lie that they're in this alone and that nobody understands. And that's not the truth, as we proved today. Friends, I look forward to being with you again next week. But until then, it's my prayer for you that you have a hope-filled week.